think one of the things that makes this society as robust as it is, and really separates, in many ways, American society from other societies, is this amazing independent sector we have that is where a lot of the change, societal change, comes from, whether that's you know, the women's movement or the civil rights movement or the environmental movement or the gay, lesbian, bi movement, whatever the human right or environmental need demands. And I guess at one point, I don't know whether you brought it to us, Don, but Kenneth Boulding once said, you know, that the place that the big change in society is going to take place is at the intersection of those three. And we have a challenge right now in that we have a very clear pecking order of which of those domains is seen as being the most legitimate, which is the private sector. And I love the private sector. I didn't think I loved the private sector working with it because I thought the private sector was sort of antithetical to the kind of values that, you know, radicals out of the 70s, 60s, 70s had.
Yeah.
Yes. But the private sector adjusts quickly. It is, in many ways, much more nimble than a university, I'll tell you. If you consult to a university, you know, this universities are like molasses. I mean, they're just, you know, kind of, the gears are grinding constantly. But I guess my point is that to recognize the importance of the independent sector, to stop this incessant beating up on the public sector, because my God, the public sector right now is trying to solve the most unbelievable problems, whether we're talking about global warming or societal equity or, you know, how we're going to live with each other or density. We've got to come to a whole new appreciation for the distinct, powerful roles of each of these sectors and how each one has to, where we need to build the talent, but also build the respect between the sectors, because it's too easy to fall back into, you know, the government is doing this, or the private sector is doing this, or what are those, you know, charity organizations doing?
Yeah. You know, this is really interesting. Thanks, Steve, for that perspective. Because most all of the work that I've been doing over the last 10 years, all three of those sectors that you're talking about, that you've described, the independent, the nonprofit, the private, and the governmental, they all come up in the work. They all are there. I mean, when you think about it, organizational policies, what are they based on? Social equity, right? A lot of it. A lot of the pressures that come from interest groups far away into the private institutions, okay? The independent institutions themselves are impacted by government regulations and rules and constraints and private sector funding issues. I mean, when you look at it, you have all these interconnections. And so what I think what Baldwin's talking about is that we're going to come to a point where all this has to come together or none of it's going to survive very well. I agree with you. I think we're getting very close to that point. And anyone in here, I don't care who you're working with or where you're working, has to deal with all three of those issues. Today. Very much so.
For every little piece of life.
Everything. Yeah, absolutely.